So my name is Tessa. I am the manager of Blue Lotus Temple, and I welcome all of you here for this incredible opportunity to listen to and be witness to Brother Billy Tan. We are so honored to have you here today. So Bhante Sujatha is traveling, and he has asked me to read a little intro about you, and it's very sweet. So this is coming from Bhante, also from me a little bit too. So a little bit about Brother Billy. He is one of the most prominent students of Bhante Punnaji, who was one of the most scholarly monks in the last century. He is also my guru. After Bhante Punnaji passed, Billy Tan took over his message to share with the world. He is a well-educated scholarly teacher and Dhamma practitioner, and he is also doing great humanitarian work in the Philippines. Brother Billy Tan is one of my, not mine, but Bhante Sujatha's most noble Dhamma friends, and he is also organizing my Dhamma tour whenever I visit Malaysia. To be honest, I'm always learning from him and we have time together. We have traveled to the Philippines and shared the Dhamma there. I love you not only for your knowledge of the Dhamma, but you are so funny and I just love your laugh. Brother Billy, I am so grateful for your love and friendship. Thank you so much for accepting my kind invitation. I think your teaching will benefit our community. So that is from Bhante Sujatha. From me, I honor and appreciate the time you're taking for this hour for our Sangha to be with you. So we're going to start with a 5-minute meditation to get everybody ready and centered. And then once the meditation is complete, brother, please begin your presentation.
Good morning, Sukihotu, and good evening in US. We have people from all over the world, East Coast, West Coast of the US, Philippines, Malaysia, and a few other places. So I'll begin by sharing the slide here. Okay. All right. So today's topic is the 4 mindful realities of stress. So because of the limited time, 45 minutes, now I have only about 40 minutes. I will go through a little fast, but I share with you this link. Feel free to use this link to download the presentation slides that I'm using so you can follow much faster. All right, so today we will cover firstly a quick discussion of what is stress, and stress leads to distress. Here, I'm using the word stress to refer to the physical disturbances of the body. So this is a physiological disturbance, and with physiological disturbance, it always triggers an emotional or psychological disturbance, and that is called distress. So I'm using these two terms to refer to the physical and the mental disturbances. Then we'll take a quick look at how it arises and affects us, what kind of effect it has on us, short-term, long-term. And the Buddha described suffering in 5 progressive stages. So we will be looking at how it affects us in that way and how we can find relief from the harmful effects of stress, because stress comes with a lot of harmful effects, and how we can be free from these harmful effects if we partake in certain practices. And those practices are basically centered around mindfulness, mindful ways to reduce the harmful effects of stress. So every day we go through life and there are inevitable realities of modern life. So environmental activities are constantly stimulating our sense organs, bombarding our attention system. Things are happening around us so fast. Our phones, our television, our children, everywhere. Things are happening, affecting us, disturbing our senses in modern life. And things are changing. Circumstances keep changing and they're becoming unpredictable. And this gives rise to all kinds of uncertainties and insecurities. And people around us, they impose their demands upon us, their expectations, putting pressure on us to respond. And we have deadlines to meet, schedules, and they drain our energy resources. So all these are actually creating all kinds of stressful situations for us. And finally, things are never what they are. There's always obstacles, problems, difficulties. They arise unexpectedly to hinder our planned activities and disrupt our peace and our tranquility. All this is happening throughout the day. And if we're not careful, if we're not mindful, and if we're not aware that these are hurting us, we may begin to unconsciously perceive them as some kind of threat or conflict. Because all these things are threatening our peace of mind. They are in conflict with what we really want. And most of the time, for untrained minds, what we want are mostly very self-centered. So all these things are happening out there, then we are trying to be self-centered for untrained minds. And that is a conflict. So we constantly experience this and it disturbs us and gives rise to stress. And we have to take a look at the actual physiological activity that's going on. Deep inside our brain, there is an emotional command center in the limbic system. There is a tiny little structure called the amygdala. This is important. You can Google this and find out more about this because this is the thing that produces a lot of reactions in the body, causing us to feel hurt and affecting our emotional states. So this tiny little structure is very sensitive to things happening around us. It scans sensory perceptions and it reacts to any potential sign of threat or danger or conflict to the organism. This actually is evolved over millions of years to protect us from harm. It triggers a release of stress hormones, causing this fight or flight reaction to protect us from harm. And basically, this is acting like a kind of bodyguard in our body. So when something happens around us, it causes us to react to avoid the danger. For example, we're walking down the street, and suddenly there is a car coming towards us. And, we don't have time to think, oh, that car is coming towards me. If I don't duck out of the way, it's going to hit me and I will die. Oh, that's not good. I'm going to duck out of the way. We don't have time to think like that. The amygdala triggers a chain reaction, causing the muscles to be all tensed up and we jump out of the way. This is an autonomic reaction. We actually have very little control over it. For most untrained mind, we have no control over this activity going on. So this is really evolved over millions of years to protect us from harm. But unfortunately, it can also be aroused unnecessarily. And this really, when the amygdala is activated, it triggers a chain reaction releasing hormones throughout the body. And this is called the fight or flight reaction. And it leads to all kinds of emotional states of fear, panic, anger, anxiety, distress, and so on. So the mind gets disturbed. And in fact, it can be aroused unnecessarily. And when it does, it triggers all this chain reaction. It becomes like a terrorist in our brain. Now, how can it be aroused unnecessarily? Very simple. You can be sitting there, let's say in the evening, waiting for dinner to be ready, and you're sitting there reading the book. And perhaps your mother or somebody in the house who has finished cooking didn't say much, walk up to you and touch you on the shoulder. At the moment you get touched, you get spooked. That's spooking. That is the amygdala kicking into high gear. So all this is really unexpected, right? Things that unnecessarily arousing our activation of the amygdala. And that releases all kinds of stress hormones in the body, causing us to experience this physiological tension we call stress. Right? So what does it do? So in the brain, this amygdala triggers a chain reaction, sends signals all over the body, and it reaches various glands in the body. And there are two glands above our kidney, the adrenal gland. They release very powerful stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And they get carried all over the body through our blood circulation very quickly. Within less than a second, it actually goes all over the body. And when it reaches every organ in the body, each organ reacts in its own unique way to this fight or flight reaction, this stress condition. For example, the heart beats faster and blood pressure rises to increase our blood circulation. Our respiration deepens so that we can draw in more oxygen, because oxygen is really needed to help us activate our body against any harm. So our breathing deepens. And it has to suspend any digestion going on. Any intestinal movement has to be suspended because that is drawing a lot of energy. So cortisol is very powerful. It actually suspends your digestive system so that it releases the rest of your body to get all the energy it needs to fight against the threat or the conflict. And our muscles get all tensed up. And this is really getting ready to either fight whatever we don't want or run away from it out of fear. And this is really the fight or flight reaction. And not only that, it causes other things. For example, the hair standing on end. This is actually a remnant of evolutionary past. You know that the mammals, animals, cats, for example, when they get frightened, you can see the hair all standing up. Humans experience that too. We call it goosebumps. When you feel goosebumps, that is your hair standing on end. And it causes your pupils to dilate so that you can actually see more clearly what's going on, what is really hurting you or what is affecting you. And your facial expression gets distorted. This is, again, a remnant of evolutionary past. Because if you think about these mammals, when they are threatened by a predator, they look fierce to try to frighten off the predator. And humans do the same. When something arouses anger or fear or any kind of threat, we show a very angry face in order to try to fight against it, right? And of course, it leads to other bodily changes, perspiration, trembling, body temperature rising, and internally, worse still, it triggers the release of sugar in the blood. So your blood sugar level rises very rapidly in order to help with the metabolism, to convert stored energy into active energy to fight against the threat. And in order to get all this working, cortisol also suspends your immune system temporarily, suppressing it, because otherwise the immune system will prevent these things from happening. So in other words, if you look at all this, it's very harmful to your body. If your immune system gets suspended frequently, you fall sick easily. If your blood sugar rises, what happens? You become diabetic. And if you tremble and perspire a lot, you're losing body heat. And that actually can also cause you to get sick. And if your facial expression distorts a lot, what happens? You get railway tracks on the line, all kinds of, lines on the face. In fact, you can tell if you see a person not very old, 50 years old, even 40 years old, the face is full of these lines, all kinds of lines. You can tell this person has gone through a fairly stressful life. Whereas people who have gone through peaceful, happy life most of the time, they don't have all these railway tracks on the face, okay? Your pupils dilating too frequently, what happens? It weakens your eyesight. Hair standing on end, sooner or later, there's no more hair to stand on end, right? Muscles getting all tense. What happens? You get body aches all over, and then with all this tension in the body, you can't relax. You feel hurt, and your intestinal movement is suspended when it's in the middle of digestion, and that is very bad because all these acids and enzymes inside your bowel system, they will cause corrosion on the wall of your stomach and your intestines, and that's not good. And your heart beating faster, blood pressure rising, you become hypertensive. So you can see it's so harmful. And these are all the different ways that stress hurts us, and we can't stop this right away when it's happening. But we can do something about it if we become aware it is happening. So in other words, when we get spooked, this release of stress hormones We cannot prevent that. This is really the physical suffering that the Buddha had been talking about, that we all experience this kind of physical suffering. We cannot prevent that. But what we can do is, if we become aware of it, we can do something about it. We can learn to relax and reduce the harmful effects. So here, I'm just showing you how harmful these effects are. And all this leads to a chain reaction. I call this the vicious cycle of emotions. When things are happening around us and we begin to perceive them as threat or conflict, the way we interpret our circumstances, what happens? It actually arouses our emotions. And with that, it causes the amygdala to kick into high gear, releasing all these hormones and causing bodily discomfort, the fight or flight reaction. And all this is really our bodily stress reaction. At the same time, this stress reaction disturbs the mind. Okay? So stress is really the organism's autonomic biochemical chain reaction, causing this fight or flight reaction. Freeze, fight, or flight. Freeze is usually something which you have never experienced before for the first time, then you freeze up. You don't even know what to do momentarily. And that is part of this stress reaction. And all this is evolved as a kind of defense mechanism against perceived threats or conflicts. And this has evolved as an unconscious autonomic reaction to protect the organism from harm. And that leads us to this first mindful reality. What is stress? Stress, in this context, I'm referring to the physiological suffering. So stress is really the organism's autonomic biochemical chain reaction leading to freeze, fight, or flight reaction, which is a defense mechanism against perceived threats or conflicts. And it is evolved as an unconscious reaction to protect the organism from harm. So it can be your bodyguard, but it can also be a terrorist in your brain. Okay, so it's very important to realize that when stress arises, it triggers emotional reaction. And here I offer you the translation by Bhante Punnaji in this Chitta Sutra, where this very important verse points out that emotions dominate the world. Emotions create distress. Here, distress means the mind is disturbed. The mind is not able to calm down. The mind is in active mental proliferation, thinking all kinds of unwholesome thoughts. So emotions create that. And emotion is that one thing to which all are spellbound. So when we are spellbound by it, we lose control over the way we are thinking. This is really the emotional disturbance we call distress. Okay? So stress and distress. The Buddha describes suffering, dukkha, in 5 progressive stages. Of course, when things first happen and produce this perception of threat or conflict, right? These 5 stages, we begin to experience grief on sorrow, sukha. That means this is the moment we start to realize, oh, something has gone wrong. Oh, it's hurting me. So we feel grief. And then we want to cry out and scream out. So sukha, parideva, lamentation. We start to cry, scream out, And then at the same time, we start to realize that it affects the body. So there is the physical bodily pain, bodily sickness that's happening around. And here, this word dukkha in this context, number 3, is used to mean the physical pain. And the twin of dukkha is domanassa, mental pain, the distress, we call this. And this is really anguish, a kind of mental sickness or mental disturbances. And all this is really hurting us. And if we don't take control of that, it leads to the final stage of suffering, which is really bad. And that is upayasa, exhaustion, despair, depression. People fall into depression. And people can die from this. You can die physically. That is, you get a heart attack. You die from cardiac arrest. You get a stroke. Or you could also become so depressed, you want to kill yourself. You may die from killing yourself with suicidal thoughts. And this is when your mind body has already given up. So there you have it, the 5 progressive stages of stress. Things go wrong, we begin to feel grief and lamentation, sokha parideva. And then we start to realize how it is hurting the body and affecting the mind, dukkha domanassa. And if we are not able to arrest the situation, if we are not able to prevent it getting out of control, we will experience upayasa, despair, depression, and we end up either killing ourselves or getting cardiac arrest. So you can see how when stress arises, if we don't take control of it, it leads to very unwholesome, unhappy circumstances or outcomes. Okay, so now I'm going to describe stress from a technical standpoint, and this is actually described by a famous scientist or endocrinologist many years ago by the name of Hans Selye. So this endocrinologist Hans Selye described stress beautifully. He actually described a model of stress, and he calls this General Adaptation Syndrome. And this has been accepted throughout, and until today, it is still a very valid description or model of what stress really is, the General Adaptation Syndrome. He described that it happens through 3 stages. The first stage he called alarm reaction. This is really the moment when you realize something has happened and affected you. So the whole body reacts. And this reaction is called sympathetic nervous system response. So this sympathetic nervous system response, it is sympathetic because it helps the body to prevent the threats or the conflicts from affecting us. So it's sympathetic to the whole body. So this is really the reaction where hormones are being released and affecting the whole body, turning it into fight or flight reaction. So this is the alarm reaction. So it's like a shock and awe moment, that moment where you get that shock, something has just happened and is hurting me. And then you start to want to fight it. And this is when the mind kicks in, recognizing and realizing threats. You put in efforts to try to fight against the threat or a conflict. And this is the psychological reaction. So now you want to do something, you want to fight it, and this is really causing you to do things maybe sometimes in very unwholesome ways. And if you are not able to arrest the situation, you go into exhaustion. This is the 3rd stage of exhaustion. So you run out of ideas or energy or resources how to deal with this problem, how to overcome the threats, and it leads to expiration. And it could lead to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It can lead to despair and depression. It can also lead to heart attack, cardiac arrest, stroke. It may even lead to suicidal tendencies. You may even want to take your own life. So these are the 3 stages in General Adaptation Syndrome. So I'm very honored to be able to share with you Bhante Punnaji's explanation of these 3 stages, how it relates to what the Buddha had been teaching all this time. So
Hans Selye, who spoke about stress, he spoke about the thing called the General Adaptation Syndrome, which has 3 parts: the alarm reaction, the stage of resistance, and the stage of exhaustion. Alarm reaction means, now if someone dies or some close relative dies, we begin to cry and lament, grief and lamentation. That is the meaning of soka parideva. Soka means grief, parideva means lamentation. And then that is called the alarm reaction. That means we react in this way, when that someone dies or something very unpleasant happens, then if we keep on crying and lamenting, say for 1 month, and at that time people will not be even able to eat or sleep properly. If you are crying and lamenting for 1 month, what happens? Your body becomes completely sick and all kinds of pains come into the body. And not only that, even your mind is depressed. That is called the stage of resistance, because you are resisting what happened. You are not willing to accept the death of your mother or your father or your brother or sister or whoever. And that is a stage of sickness in the body. And then, if it still continues beyond 1 month, what will happen? You will be completely exhausted, and as a result, you might even either commit suicide or you might automatically die. That is called the stage of exhaustion. And this is all in the words of the Buddha. Soka parideva is the alarm reaction. Dukkha domanassa. Dukkha is the physical pain. Domanassa is the mental pain. That is the stage of resistance. And then the last stage is upayasa. Upayasa means exhaustion, where you might even commit suicide or die. So this is really a very interesting thing, that the modern scientists who are explaining these things, they are really talking about what the Buddha has been saying long time ago. So this shows that the teachings of the Buddha is so important, and also it is a fact. It's not just a blind belief. So it is very important to understand these things and begin to practice these things so that you can be free from all sufferings of samsara.
But the Punaji has basically correlated what the Buddha taught as the 5 stages, 5 progressive stages of suffering with what's Fanseli described as the General Adaptation Syndrome. First, when we experience this shock and awe, the beginning of something that is hurting us, we experience grief, sorrow, and lamentation, and that is the alarm reaction. And then we begin to feel the body hurting and also the mind getting affected. That is the stage of resistance, dukkha, domanassa. And then if we are not able to arrest the situation, we will allow it to, we will let it get out of control, and then we experience exhaustion, upayasa, stage of exhaustion. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is this vicious cycle of emotions. So when we begin to perceive something as threat or conflict, it triggers this chain reaction, and we feel the stress reaction in the body. Emotions are aroused, the body changes. And if we don't do something about it, it leads to mental disturbance. Now the mind is unstable. The mind is getting angry over whatever that is happening. So this is mental disturbance, distress. And when that arises, we begin to react in our habitual way. We all have certain emotional habits, and we will react in that way. Some people like to shout and scream. Some people like to cry. Some people like to shut off from everybody else. Some people like to do things that hurt other people. So we begin to react in those ways. And that leads to all kinds of unwholesome reactions: greed, anger, fear, hatred, and so on. These are emotional reactions. And if we still don't learn to stop this, if we still allow this to go on, what happens next? We begin to cling on to this and call this I, me, or mine. I am unhappy. I want to express to the whole world how I feel. This I, me, or mine. Personalizing all this reaction. And that leads to getting it out of control. Upayasa. Feeding emotions with imagination, memory, expectations. And this leads the mind to a state of very unwholesome thinking. Mental proliferation. The mind begins to think of all kinds of unwholesome thoughts and unwholesome reactions to whatever it is. So this is really something we have to do something about. So what can we do about it? Because if we don't do it, this emotional chain reaction gets out of control. It leads to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It leads to depression. And finally, it leads to all kinds of hurt and all kinds of unwholesome outcomes. You may even have suicidal tendencies. You may get cardiac arrest. So that leads us to this second mindful reality of stress. Stress disrupts our body's immune system, and it begins to produce all kinds of physical pain and mental suffering, distress, intense emotional reaction. And that leads to mental proliferation. The mind goes into unwholesome states. And it is actually centered around I, me, or mine. I call it I, me syndrome, because it is imagination. The mind begins to imagine things that are not true. We're just imagining it. The mind begins to recall memory of past, of how this situation has hurt us before, and think about how, it has made us suffer and so on. And the mind begins to want to expect things to be different from what is already happening in front of us. So imagination, the I, memory, the M, expectation, the E. All these are very self-centered. That's why I call this the I, me syndrome. We just keep thinking how it hurts us, how it affects us, what I want to do about it. The I, me, or mine becomes very strong. This reinforces this very intense feeling of self-centeredness, selfishness. So this is really how stress, if not taken care of, if not calmed down, can cause all this physical and mental suffering. The way to overcome this is the practice of Satipatthana, commonly translated as mindfulness. And I just want to share with you Bhante Punnaji's explanation of the term Satipatthana. He doesn't call it mindfulness, because the real meaning of Satipatthana, you have to look at the actual root word, the Pali root word. Sati, we all know, means attention, what you pay attention to. Right? What you are aware of. Upa means to bring it inwards, within, bringing inwards. Thana means to place or to focus. So it really means to focus your attention inwards, to place your attention inwards. And Bhante actually calls it introspection or introspective awareness. He uses various variations of this term: introspection, introspective awareness, and systematic introspection. So the full practice of Satipatthana is really this systematic introspection. So this is what Bhante Punnaji used to explain Satipatthana. And there are 4 areas to focus on, 4 focuses of introspection. The first one is Kayanupassana, which is observing what happens to the body. Observe physical manifestation of reactions in the body, how the body is changing in terms of our breathing, our muscle tension, our heart rate, and so on. And the second area of focus is how it feels, Vedananupasana, observing the manifestation of sensations and feelings in the body, whether it is pleasant, unpleasant, comfortable, or uncomfortable, and how it feels to us. And when that happens, we also begin to get emotionally aroused, and therefore we need to now observe the manifestation of emotional excitement. Chittanupassana, affection. And this is really leading to mood and temperament and how it arouses various emotional states of fear, anger, panic, anxiety, and so on. So Bhante calls this mood and temperament for a very good reason. Mood is really how you feel about something. If it is something nice and pleasant, you feel good. You're in a good mood. And if it is something unpleasant, something that hurts you, then you feel bad. You get angry. And this is really putting you in a bad mood. Temperament is our urge to react, whether we want to do something about it, how we want to react. Some people, like I said, some people scream out loud. Some people shun themselves away from other people. Some people hit out at other people, and this is terrible. There are people who actually are very violent. The moment they get hurt, they want to hurt the next person standing next to them, most likely the very people who love them. So this is really the emotional states that arouse. And when that happens, we begin to think about what we want to do, conceptualizing the whole situation, Dhammanupassana, observing this manifestation of thoughts and concepts and the interpretation of circumstances, past, present, and future, and leading to mental proliferations. So these are the 4 areas of focuses we have to pay attention to. But the main part I'm going to talk about today, or the main thing I'm actually focusing on today, is just the first 2. These 2, number 1 and number 2, Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana, relates to the bodily part, whereas Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana relates to the mental part. The important thing is to do something when you are aware something has happened to your body. So Kayanupassana means you become aware something has happened to your body. And Vedananupassana is when you become aware, this is really hurting me, this is really affecting me, this is really feeling bad, unpleasant, uncomfortable, right? And then the mind goes into all kinds of mental proliferation. So that the practice of Satipatthana, the first thing you really need to do is be aware of how your body is reacting. This is actually a very practical, day-to-day, 24/7 practice of Satipatthana. This is not talking about sitting there, meditating quietly. No, this is not talking about Satipatthana meditation. This is talking about the 24/7 practice of Satipatthana, moment to moment, being aware things are happening to your body and how the body feels. So this is the important part. If you can do that, if you can cultivate this state or this sense of mindfulness, being aware that your body is changing, now you're feeling uncomfortable, right? You can do something about it. You realize this is your acuity to the advent of stress, your acuity to stress arising. If you are aware stress is arising, you can do something about it. But if you're not aware, you're unconscious about it, unmindful about it, stress arises, it starts to hurt you mentally, emotionally, and then your mind goes into all kinds of crazy thinking. So the first thing really is to be aware that the body is changing. So let's listen to Bhante Punaji explain this part.
And introspection means what are we going to look at when we turn inward? There are only 4 things to look at. One is to look at the body. Now, when we say looking at the body, we begin to think that looking at the body is to use the eyes to look at the body. That is all wrong. That is looking at something outside. That is not looking at inside. To look at the body is not with our eyes, but with our mind. Close your eyes and look at the body. That means you are looking not with your eyes, but with your mind. Focus your attention on the body. You can close your eyes and focus your attention on the body. And when you focus your attention on the body, what you observe is movement in the body. tension in the body. You can become aware of tensions in the body and movements in the body. Now, for example, if you open your eyes and look at something, and you see that it is something pleasant, what happens to your body? That is the important thing. And your body will begin to move. The moment you dislike something that you see, again the body will begin to move. It is that movement of the body that is important to observe, but not by looking with your eyes, but with your mind. Look at the body. And then how the body feels. Is it comfortable or uncomfortable? That means if there is tension in the body, it becomes uncomfortable. If the body is relaxed, it's comfortable. So you can look at the body in terms of movements and tensions, and also feel whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable. So that is what is called Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana. Kayanupassana is to become aware of the body, and Vedananupassana is become aware whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable.
So when we are aware something is happening, right? When we are aware that it is hurting the body, what can we do about it? We can practice what I call the 3-step self-compassion. Self-compassion because you're now helping yourself. Be compassionate towards yourself. And it's 3 simple steps. First, when you become aware things are happening around you and hurting you, learn to pause. Allow time for this emotional excitement and this anxiety to calm down. And allow time for these hormonal reactions in the body to subside. And then to help it speed up that process of calming down, learn to relax. Simple way of relaxation is to take a deep breath, relax the body, and consciously compose the mind. Breathing is a very important part of relaxation. And this is really what, like earlier on when Bhante at Blue Lotus led us in this meditation, take deep breath, okay? So taking deep breath will help you calm down your emotional excitement very quickly and in fact subside the hormonal reactions very quickly. And then learn to purposefully focus on unwholesome and beneficial response to the problem. The think. We have some unmindful people. Leave it there. Okay. Can we all turn off your mic, please? Are you finished talking? Okay, anyway, the third part is to purposely focus on wholesome and beneficial response to the problem. Because when the body is adequately calmed down and the mind is more composed and stable, now you can think about what can I do to change the situation or improve the situation or improve my relationship with the people who are hurting me and so on. So this is really the think part. So when all this is happening to us, right, now we have this vicious cycle of emotions hurting us, we got to learn to be aware that firstly, there is a stress reaction going on. And this is the Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana, being aware of bodily changes and how it feels. Be mindful about your heart beating faster, heart rate. Your breathing is deepening, muscle getting all tensed up, body temperature rising, and facial expression distorting, and so on. Be aware of all this thing going on. And once you're aware, realize, you got to do something about it. And that is pause, relax, And then think about how you can respond to it once you become adequately relaxed, calm, and composed. So this is what you can do to stop all this, okay? And very important thing about breathing, mindful breathing, the most critically overlooked relaxation tool, because it easily relaxes the body and calms the mind. It helps you take in oxygen. It stabilizes your blood rate and blood pressure, your heart rate and blood pressure. It regulates your body temperature and blood circulation. It restores a condition of stability called homeostasis. And it helps you to calm your nervous system so that you no longer, your stress reaction will then stop, because now the mind is aware there is an absence of threat. When you are breathing peacefully, when you're able to breathe, your mind is aware that things are okay. But when you are not breathing properly and when you are palpitating and so on, your mind thinks there is a threat. So now you want to create this perception of absence of threat, and finally helps you bring your attention and awareness to the present moment. And this is what mindful breathing can do for you. And this is a very important tool to help you stay relaxed and calm down. And relieving from stress, right? When you relax the body with conscious relaxation, all the biochemical reaction stops, the tension eases, the body becomes comfortable. A relaxed body is a necessary condition for a calm mind. If your body cannot relax, you cannot calm your mind. This is happening, this is done by breaking the biochemical chain reaction. When you begin to relax, you're breaking the biochemical chain reaction. It does not continue to release hormones. You can then calm your mind with introspective attention, right? And relaxing, the relaxed body suggests absence of threats, attention on repetitive, flowing, rhythmic activity like breathing, right? And if you really need to turn on some soft music, by all means, can help you calm the mind. Conscious, focused attention on the present moment, and there will not be any further arousal of biochemical chain reaction. Mental disturbances will stop. Your mind is calm and composed. This is avoiding mental proliferation. That leads us to the third mindful reality, how we can gain relief from the harmful effects of stress by breaking this biochemical chain reaction and avoiding mental proliferation. So we have looked at these 5 progressive stages of suffering and how it correlates with the 3 stages of General Adaptation Syndrome. What is important is to be aware that this is happening. So this part, be aware that something is hurting you and now you feel like you want to scream out. Realize that. And then you can do something about it by relaxing and reducing this physical pain, by simply relaxing and breathing. And with that, it actually prevents distress and exhaustion arising. So you are able to arrest the situation at that point, number 3. And that will help you stop stage of resistance and stage of exhaustion. This is really how we can help ourselves. And that leads us to the 4th mindful reality of stress, conscious relaxation, systematic introspection. These are the most effective and sustainable ways to stabilize the body and calm the mind. And this will free the body and mind from the harmful effects of stress and help us to cultivate peace, tranquility, and wellness in body and mind. So in summary, these are the 4 mindful realities of stress. Stress is an autonomic biochemical chain reaction. It disrupts the body immune system and leads to all kinds of unwholesome activity in the body and mind. To gain relief, we have to break this biochemical chain reaction and avoid mental proliferation, and practicing systematic introspection, conscious relaxation that can help to calm the mind, free the body and mind from harmful effects of stress. I'd like to finish off with this slide where Bhante Punnaji gave us a very good quote here. This is one of my favorite from Bhante Punnaji. You know, when something is happening and hurting you, don't think about why that person is saying that to you. Don't try to analyze and figure out what's going on out there. Pay attention to what's going on in here. The whole purpose is really to solve the problem within. So in other words, when things are happening out there, don't try to analyze why people are saying that, why they're doing that and all that, because that hurts you even more. Look at how it is affecting you and help yourself calm down. So the purpose of human thinking, the purpose of human intelligence is not to discover the truth about what's going on out there, but to solve the problem within us. So with that, I end my presentation. I hope this has been helpful. Please, if you have not already done so, download the slides from this link, shortcut link. All right. And if you have any questions, please post them now. And if you can think of the questions later, feel free to contact me. Most importantly, if you want to look at more of Bhante Punnaji's videos, I have here a shortcut link, tiny.cc/Bhante Punnaji videos. Then you can access Bhante Punnaji YouTube channel. With that, I end my sharing. Thank you very much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, over to you, Tessa.
Right. If you're in that temple proper and you have a question, you must use this microphone.
Oh, we have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Billy. So,
Hi.
other than breathing, do you have, would you be sharing any other strategies to take the mind out of a stressful state?
Yes, there are some very helpful breathing exercises. Of course, the more advanced ones you can learn from yoga, but there are some very simple ones. Since you asked, maybe I'll just share, okay, if you allow me an extra minute, I'll just share a slide. Just give me a second while I open up the slide. It's called the L.S.D. breathing, long, slow, deep breathing. Let me look for that slide. Sorry about that. Okay, I call this L.S.D. breathing. L.S.D. doesn't mean the psychedelic drug, but it means long, slow, deep. So this is a very helpful exercise. Anybody can practice anytime. You can even practice this while standing in the bus or sitting in the railway car or in the taxi or whatever. Consciously slow breathing, right? Consciously allow the breathing to slow down. The important keyword here is allow. So when you're feeling stressed, one of the first things you could do is just allow your breathing to slow down, because your breathing is very hasteful at that time. And this will help you relax the body and calm the mind. And basically, do not exert effort in doing so. Just simply allow it to slow down. Let it take longer. So therefore, the first practice is just allow it to go on longer. You do this one step at a time. It's 3 stages. First, just let your breathing to take longer. Long breathing, it can go as long as 5 or 6 seconds, no longer than that. Or if you are new to this, you can go up to only 4 seconds just for a while, because normally when we get excited, our breathing is only 2 or 3 seconds. So now you allow it to go on, and then consciously just let it flow more naturally, effortlessly. And that is the slow part. And finally, when your body is able to allow this breathing to slow down enough, then take deeper breath. Don't try and do it in the wrong order, right? It's important to do it in this order, because this will really help you relax the body, calm the mind, and put the amygdala to sleep. Otherwise, if the amygdala is hyperactive, your body will still have all kinds of stress hormones. So I hope this answers that question, one of the simple exercises. I have a whole chest full of many exercises which I have developed called the mindfulness-based emotional composure. Of course, today, there's not much time to share those. I hope one day in the future, I will be able to present that program to all of you, the mindfulness-based emotional composure program that I have developed and used in many parts of the world. I've been using that for many years. I developed it long before I met Bhante Punnaji. And in fact, after learning the Dhamma from Bhante Punnaji, I have modernized it to, or rather updated it with a lot of Dhamma lessons into it. So there you have it. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go right to announcements for the temple here. Thank you so much, Mr. Tan. Bhante Punaji was here at this temple, I don't know, like 5 years ago,
a few
maybe?
years ago. Yeah.
And it's so sad that he's passed, but that's what happens. But let me, once again, thank you so much and many blessings to you.